Hey everyone, this is Dale Berkbaugh, and welcome back to this show that I created, talking about living your best life. And the goal of this program really is to talk to wonderful everyday people and ask them how they live their best life. And hopefully, we will inspire you to find ways to live your best life or celebrate ways that you may live your best life. I believe that all people have a story to tell, and everyone can be an inspiration, and that's kind of why I created this series. And so, um, please join us and feel free to ask some questions while we're in the live, or if you want to ask some questions on the replay, I will make sure that I can respond. And thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get to it. So today we have the wonderful Sandra Dávila. Did I say that correctly?
Dávila.
Oh, okay. Thank you for correcting me there. So welcome. And Sandra, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from, that'd be great.
Thank you. I find this really cool. Thank you for doing this. Um, I'm originally from Aguascalientes, Mexico, which I haven't tried this yet, but they say that if you make a circle around the map of Mexico, the Aguascalientes is right in the middle, is the radius, but I have that to try. Yeah. Yeah, and I've lived in Elgin in Chicago for most of my life. But I've also lived in Mexico, of course, and a tiny bit in Spain, in Russia, and China.
Oh, wow.
So the stories living abroad brings you a different perspective of what community looks like, or good aspects, bad aspects, or how to bring balance into a community.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know, some of my limited travel abroad in some different places. Um, I find it really amazing, seeing some of that community piece. I think that's something that I'm always attracted to, and get excited seeing the good, but also some of the bad. The bad opens up my eyes to things and makes me more aware of things that maybe I overlook here, locally or in my own experience what I've had. So, uh, you know, we can always do better. So I'm inspired by by both, I guess. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. So one of the first questions that I usually ask is, the brand that I'm pushing is Hellagood Life, and I always ask people, what does Hellagood Life mean to you?
Ever since you started, I've been reflecting on it. Like, I don't know. I thought it was plants. But yeah, I've been reflecting on it, and I think I got to the bottom of it. Of course I didn't, but as far as I can tell, it's being able to have it's connection, being connected. Um, I heard I heard a parent some time ago say that they were teaching their kid that happiness is our goal, that we want to be good, that we want to be okay. And I think this is related to what it means to have a hella good life, because it's like that's doomed. If happiness is the goal, then we're all doomed because we're not happy all the time.
Right.
And it's just one item in our process of life. But there's a lot more things that we experience, and anger is just as valid as happiness, and sadness is just as valid as happiness. And good life is, and even the title, really good because it's hell a good life. It's a balance within itself. Yeah. So I think it's connection to your body, connection to your mind, connection to others, um, to the environment. spiritual connection. And those connections vary from person to person, right?
Right.
Like I feel connection to plants outside of myself. I feel connection to spirituality by playing my drum and singing songs. Um, I feel connection to earth when I'm gardening. Um, I feel connection to my neighbors when I know their stories. And storytelling, I think, is an essential part of connection. This is why I love your project. But having the autonomy of being able to tell your story in a way that is not harmful, that where it's a welcoming space, that it's a safe space, um, especially for people of color, because we don't get to be in the books. So what we have is oral history, and we're all living history, right? So when we tell our story, it can be re-traumatizing. And I always check to see what's the intention behind someone asking me to share my story. Is it to sell? Is it to support something? Is it to bring awareness to immigration? Is it all of these things? So, Hellagood Life is a life of connection. That brings about empathy. That brings about respect. That brings about love and admiration and all of these beautiful things. Yeah, I think
Interesting.
so. Yeah, at a broad level, I think at a personal level, plants for me is a hella good life. Because they connect earth and they connect life in a way that we're not used to, like having a pet that barks. You know that it's hungry or that something is up or someone's approaching the door. But a plant speaks to you, communicates in different ways that we're not used to. So you have to really sit down with it and observe and learn about it to be able to care for it. And that's how I connect.
Oh,
Bicycles.
that's
Building
awesome.
community bikes. Yeah, it's interesting how people find connections, or how we navigate the world to find those connections, especially now with the pandemic. How
Yeah.
the ways that we connect with each other and to ourselves has changed radically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that I've been someone who's done this sort of thing like pre-pandemic. But it's interesting because this has really opened up a lot more um, willingness and comfort, I guess. Whereas early on, it was very challenging sometimes for people and things like that. But now this is more common, that it's kind of like, this is how we've been doing things for the last 2 years or whatever. So that's interesting. And one of the things that I love the idea of connection. And I think one of the things that's great about this is, going through the pandemic in these times, we're able to do this. You said you're on the outside of Chicago area, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in Fort Worth. And so, we're connecting like, two friends just hanging out or whatever. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. The funny thing about the plants, boy, I'm originally from Pennsylvania and I moved to Texas and I struggle to grow anything down here. The heat is just, oh man, it's just brutal. And so it's interesting as you're describing things about the plant, how in tune you have to be with the plant to keep it healthy. For me, like, it's something that I obviously am not in tune enough because I've killed many a plant as I'm trying to grow different things and vegetables and different things like that, or even just flowers and things. So, but your description of that is is an interesting one for me to reflect on a little bit. And because I live that mindfulness space, and that's kind of what it is, being aware and being connected. And it is a much different communication than like the dog example, or like my kids. They can kind of say, hey, I'm hungry, it's time to eat or whatever. But that plant, you have to be there and you have to be aware and in tune with it a little bit, I think.
There's a mindful exercise with plants where you put them water. So you get a bowl and you put the pot inside of it, and you add water to it, to the bowl, not to the water, to the plant. And you sit there and observe as the plant absorbs the water.
Mm.
It depends on the size of the pot, how long you're going to be there.
Right.
But it is really cool because you start to notice how much water the plant needs. And when the plant doesn't need any more water, it stops absorbing it.
Sure.
Oh, it's just, there's a lot of teachings and lots to learn from plants, but I think it's about connection. I think I reflect on lives. Like they make me reflect on not doing anything to it is the same thing as doing too much to it. Some people are like, oh, I forgot about it and it died because I didn't water it for 3 months. And I'm like, oh, okay. And someone else might say, I kill it because I watered it every day. And I know I didn't need water every day. I'm like, yeah, it's
Right.
about balance. Oh, I guess that's a hella good life. Finding ways to engage in the lifelong lasting search for balance. That's a hella good life.
Right. Right. Well, and that's a really interesting analogy in general, because with all the division and things that we see in society, we have that happening in humanity, I guess, too, that we're kind of out of balance. We're either giving too much or not giving enough or whatever. And then those people are, there's a lot of harm going on in many different ways. And so I don't know, that just kind of makes me think a little bit, but anyhow.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you and I met through Kenyan nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
And this is this is what I have here on my table, along with MLK Leader's Manual for Kenyan Nonviolence. And I think that also has helped me connect with the community that doesn't only recognize that there is oppression, but they invite you to take action. And I think that's what resonates with me, where that it's a holistic approach to healing and connection to community, empowerment. And so that's also a hella good life. Like once you know your neighbors' stories and your community stories, or stories of the individuals in your community, learning to not only find balance individually, but find balance in a community, like in your
Yeah.
family, and then outside of you, with your neighbors, with your it just keeps growing. But I think that's also what has brought me to have a hella good life. Kenyan nonviolence, plants, bicycles.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
so I have this one question that I ask everyone, and it's kind of a odd question, in that I share three questions. You can pick one, whichever resonates most with you, and then just kind of run with it. So here are the three questions, and again, whichever one sounds most fun or whatever. So where do you find the most joy is one option. What inspires you? And the last one is, what is your superpower? Any of those speak to you?
They're all the same.
All right.
I think it's connection, connection, connection. Yeah, what brings me the most joy is there's so many things. I'm a happy person. Um, I'm not a happy person when I'm not in balance or too imbalanced. But where I find the most joy is being in tune with myself, which can look in many different ways. It could look like not leaving home and drinking a lot of water. That's the most joyful thing. Or doing yoga at the local yoga studio, Vida, or riding a bicycle down a hill to go meet up with more friends to ride bikes with. That's amazing. There's a hill by where I live, and I call it Death Hill. It's on a curve. It's super steep. It has train tracks across it that are not perpendicular exactly to the road because it's on a
Oh.
curve. And it's always usually full of debris and there's car traffic. So all of those elements make a not hella good hill. So I think that's where I find joy, but it all goes back to being able to share. Um, yeah, being able to share and being able to feel that I have autonomy in my actions, that I have a say in how I experience the world. And that's what inspires me too. Um, okay, no. Yes, but yeah, yes, and youth. I think my jam is youth empowerment and youth. I worked for so many years with children in public education in different schools around the world and different systems. And I've come to the realization that as an educator, my job is not to teach the curriculum, but it is to bring conscience and connection for children in the community to be autonomous and to decide what they want their future to look like, to give them the tools that they need. So I think that is what inspires me the most, seeing children in action, seeing children reach out. Like I told you before we went live, my neighbors came and knocked on the door. There's a 10th grader and a first grader going into first grade, little neighbor, and they came and knocked on the door and like, you got any books? And I'm like, hell yeah. I got a garage full of books. And that's amazing. Like they want to choose what they want to read. And I'm like, well, my books are all in the garage and they're all in boxes. So how are we going to be able to browse through the books? And they come up with answers. Children are the best at solving things, even though it doesn't make sense to most adults all the time. But they find innovative ways of creating solutions. So they're like, well, take them outside the boxes. Like, of course. Like, what am I gonna like? What if it rains? Like, oh well, we need a. What about your porch? I'm like, okay, the porch. You have a bookcase there. I'm like, I do, but I don't have time to do it. We'll help you. So we have a book arranging date to make a little community library for the children in the block on my porch.
Oh,
Like
how cool.
that's all of it together. That's connection, that's youth empowerment, that's education outside of school, that's children having autonomy. It's I think it's my superpower too.
Wonderful. That's so great. Uh,
Yeah.
I love the little neighborhood free libraries and things like that that people build to kind of create a sense of community and also share and kind of empower people is one of the ways that I look at it. I think reading is kind of a super powerful tool. And so anytime we can get kids excited about reading, I think that's a great thing. And having that personal connection that you're making there is so awesome. Uh, that's
Challenging. I think
wonderful.
also one of what brings me joy is teaching kids or young adults, people younger than me actually, just in general, to question in general, but more specifically, question authority. And it's not defying, but it is like kind of eye opening for the little ones or young people and for the adults. Like last summer, the previous two last summers, I've delivered books on my bicycle to neighborhood kids around Elgin. And um, the moms and the adults in the households come out and say, "Oh yeah, bring the books. You're gonna read that, right?" They're telling the little ones, "You're gonna read that. You're gonna take 5 books, and you're gonna read." And I'm like, "What do you read? Do you want anything to read?" And so I started telling children like, does your parent or adult at home ask you to read? Yeah. Like, do they read themselves? And they're taken aback and saying, no, not really. I'm like, "Ooh." So next time they ask you to read and you don't want to, ask them why they're not reading. It's totally valid. And so the parents just started coming out to see if I had anything to read. And I'm like, yeah, what do you want to read? It doesn't have to be heavy literature. It could be telenovelas. It could be, anything that you're interested in. And yeah, defying not defying authority, but questioning where the rules come from and why they're being asked to do something, because it's not fair all the time, and that's where imbalance comes from.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I love, my purpose in life is to challenge people to become innovative leaders so that we can change the world together. And so I think you're doing that. You're living that. You're challenging the kids to challenge the parents to get them active and become, reading, I think empowers us. Even it doesn't matter what it is. I think any form of reading is a good thing and, could lead to, really changing lives and changing families and all that kind of stuff. So that's really really exciting.
Critical thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Here in Elgin, we don't have a news source of information in Spanish. We have one that doesn't really, it's for the whole area of the Chicagoland area. So the news are not particular to what's happening in Elgin.
Mm,
And I find that alarming because that's a lack of connection to the community. Like my parents know what's happening in Latin America and Chicago, and they watch the news from Mexico every day, but they don't know what's happening around the corner. And I'm like,
right,
why is this happening? Why do we not give value to connecting to one another by flow of information? That's only one way to connect, but yeah, I find that alarming and I don't know what to do about it. I don't think it's for me to do, but it's for the community to do, but I have to
right.
speak it to people. Like,
Well, I it's interesting that you bring that point up because I think we are a very isolated community now, and I think that's some of our problems. Like when I moved to Texas, I realized that we had I didn't realize this until many years um, in 15 pushing 20 years almost, that I realized we have these big privacy fences around our yards and different things like that, and then I wondered why neighbors weren't as connected as they were when I grew up. We used to like run around with the neighbor kids and ride bikes and like run through the woods and build forts and like do all these things. and it doesn't seem like neighbors are as connected. And so that's the privacy fences and those sorts of things are things that were pointed out to me as one of the reasons why we're kind of disconnected. And I think there are a lot of different reasons, but I think we've maybe society in general has kind of pushed us to be these islands onto ourselves. And we're such an individualistic society that we take pride in being the individual that we are, or whatever, and we neglect the importance and the value of community and that connection and stuff like that. And so it's interesting that you are aware of that and see that in the community, because if you want to get anything to happen, you got to be connected to the people right beside you, right? And so it all sort of happens locally before anything happens on a national or global scale. And so you do have to know what's going on locally, and so you have to find ways to connect, and sometimes that's really hard, the way things are set up. And so I love that you're doing some of that through through books, sharing that as a way to build community and things like that. And I think that also brings up a really great point of we all can find one way to connect, maybe, find whatever we find interesting. I know you like bikes as well. Here locally, I have a guy that created this whole idea of bike gangs and neighborhood bike gangs to try and build that community that we used to have when growing up, where we would just bike around with a couple of friends and things like that. But anyhow, so so I love what you're doing, and you bring up some really great insights. It's interesting.
Yes, the bicycles, now that you mention it, level the ground for connection. So whatever you are, whatever titles you have, you're still on two wheels. And you're riding next to someone that you have no idea who it is. So neighborhood slow rolls are really cool. Neighborhood bicycle rides. Um, there we have Elgin Community Bikes here, and it's a bicycle shop, a community bike shop, and we organize rides, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. We have a full moon ride that's a monthly thing, and we ride out at 9 p.m. And
Hmm.
it's it's towards, there's no age range, so it's not advertised as a specifically for adults. So this one time, multiple times kids have shown up, and it's always the first times that I saw kids joining, I questioned, like, are they gonna make it? It's 7 or 8 miles. It's at night. There's potholes. It could be, and they just did it. They just did it. And then I learned from a more experienced colleague, Parker, that if you get the most vulnerable writer in the lead, we can all support them and go at their pace and boost their energy and their confidence in writing, because we're all with you. We're all behind you. We got you. And that's what happened this one time with a little writer called Leo. Leo, if you're out there, come back and write with us. He was falling behind, so we stopped at a stop sign, and Parker said he will lead the ride. And I think it was just one time that someone approached me and said, "Hey, we're a bunch of adults. We want to go faster." And I very happily said, "Leo's leading the ride tonight, and I'm helping him with the route." And they said, "Okay." And that was the end of it. And it was so beautiful. It was a third grader, 8 or 9 year old, leading a pack of adults on bicycles at night in the street. That's education.
That's awesome. That's a really great strategy or plan of attack to be inclusive and to try and build that leadership a little bit and make them feel special, and also kind of have that sense of community, sticking together and that sort of thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that brought about a bunch of questions because I was writing next to him and he was like, the light is red and we're still rolling. We're still writing. I'm like, yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, because there's a lot of us. Like, yeah. So then why do we need red lights? And I'm like, oh, well, that's a better question. I mean, they are needed when there's, it solves conflicts, traffic conflicts. But
Right.
yeah, do we need them all the time? When do you respect them? When are you allowed not to? Not that you're breaking the law, but if you're riding a bicycle and you're coming to a crossroads and the light is red and there's no one else in the street, when you have a group of 70 people riding in the street and cars can wait, that's a different way to connect in community, to get to know your neighborhood. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
that's a good point too. It helps you get to know the neighborhood as well as the neighbors. And so it's kind of a good thing that sometimes, I didn't really ride my bike around too much here. And so I didn't know my neighborhood. I always took my bike somewhere. And so as we were trying to do this, it got me to know the local streets and how they connect and different things like that I didn't really do because I mostly hopped in a car and went somewhere, so I think that's important too, because then you get to see the neighborhood and connect and understand what's going on in the neighborhood, as well as those people that you're riding with and making those connections. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also something to say about comfort. I think I've come to the realization that we live very comfortable lives,
Mm.
but that doesn't mean it's a hella good life. It just means that it's a comfortable life. So how we process discomfort is important in having a hella good life, welcoming discomfort. Um, Not that you're going to submit to like horrible things, but like riding a bicycle during winter might be discomfort, might not be the nicest weather to ride in, but it's going to give you dopamine. It's going to help you know, um, your physical fitness level or your mental health, or like going to the grocery shop walking instead of driving your car because it's 5 blocks away. It might not
Right.
be the most comfortable thing, but it's going to be good for you. So I think welcoming discomfort in different levels that are appropriate, and you can handle it whatever your capacity is, in this fast-paced society, is important to consider in having a good life. Like, yeah. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes me also think of it kind of takes me down a rabbit hole, sort of classism as well, though, it makes me think of, like, you know ultra comfort and mid-level comfort and no comfort or discomfort, right? And then it kind of makes me think of communities and where people fall in those things, in those different levels, and what we do for comfort and how that can be harmful, and all of these, like, there's all these different things that my head spins off and thinks about that stuff, because I'm thinking of those that have less comfort, and how can we raise people up, and different things like that is, just kind of how my brain how my brain works when I think of that. And that's an important thing to be thinking about, I think, because we often only think of our own comfort, and if we don't get a little bit uncomfortable at times, or have some discomfort, then we don't think about other people's comfort and discomfort and things like that. So again, it kind of comes back to that empathy thing, I think, for me. Just kind of, thinking about that, but it's interesting.
Yeah, the discomfort and comfort, discomfort, and social justice, and how that's related to if my neighbor is not comfortable, um, or is not being able to afford rent, or um, yeah, like what level of discomfort do you need? There it's so nuanced. Like if I see it from the perspective of social justice, like you need to step into that level of learning zone, which is uncomfortable, and that brings about discomfort, but the healthy type of discomfort. And at the same time, an unhoused person that is living in by the train tracks is way too uncomfortable to live by the train tracks when it's winter outside in Elgin. So like connecting those two and seeing how they interact, and um, there's a lot of instances that I can think of where um, people feel uncomfortable talking about racism or violence in schools,
Hmm.
or these things that are advocating for social justice, for equity, for change, for um, a less racist society or community, and it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to talk about. And it brings about discomfort and sometimes strong emotions. Um, so yeah, that brings me to think about um, racial healing circles along with Kenyan nonviolence. I think those two paired have helped me connect to myself and to the community in a way that Kenyan nonviolence has a lot of information that is heavy to process, that it's uncomfortable to process, that it's very eye-opening, the type of history that we don't really get in school. But then racial healing circles come to ease that discomfort and tell you, we holistically see you as a person of color that needs to engage in self-care, but also is oppressed. And we recognized all of you, not just like, go take a bath and you're still undocumented after the bath. Like self-care does not cut it by itself. Um, so how to live a balanced life of between comfort and discomfort, between connection to yourself and connection to others. Um, I think, yeah, being mindful of it all is a hella good life.
It's a hell of a good challenge for sure, but
You're
when we
right.
get it right, I think we create a hell of a good life. And but
What would
I,
be
I
life
do.
without challenges, though?
That's
A
yeah.
hella boring life.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Maybe that would bring about more answers. Like, what is challenging for you?
well,
Yeah.
shall I ask that?
You want to answer that?
Um, so I do ask a similar question, but let me start with a maybe an easier one, and then we'll jump into something similar to that and see where that goes. But um, what's the biggest success? What's one of your biggest successes, or an area that you're most proud of in life?
At a personal level or community level?
Uh,
Both.
whatever, yeah, whatever, either or.
I think they are related. We started, I connected to some folks in the neighborhood, in the neighboring county.
Hmm.
And because their community had an ICE detention center, immigration and customs enforcement jail for immigrants and refugees. And we started a cancel the ICE contract in McHenry County. And long story made short, we connected, we pushed the connection with so many people, so many organizations, a lot to process, a lot of doors opening and closing, unexpected happenings, very eye opening. And it was a very tough but beautiful process. And I think that's one of my, I think because it was such a, I experienced such growth in my practice and it was so challenging that I found it the most successful at a community level because we pushed so much that it created enough momentum for other organizations at the state level and national level to come, and they shut down not one but three jails, the three jails in the state of Illinois
Oh,
for
wow.
immigrants and refugees. And at the personal level, I think I had a really strong and heavy but beautiful moment of realization when we were at an action outside the jail during a snowstorm. I think it was wintertime, and talking about discomfort. And in comparison, our discomfort is nothing versus being jailed,
Right.
you know. But so we're standing outside, and the situation is that this is a county jail where the fourth floor is rented out to um, what is the entity, the federal entity that regulates immigration? The Department of Justice, right?
I think, yeah.
And they rent it out so that they can set up the jail for the ICE jail for immigrants and refugees. But it's only the fourth floor. So when we were out there banging on drums and singing and with candles, the prisoners noticed us and they started making
Mm,
connection. They started turning on and off lights. They started banging on the windows. They started waving hello and trying to communicate and acknowledge that we're there. That trying to say that we see you as much as we see them. But my big moment of realization of um, walking this abolitionist path came when I saw that not only the fourth floor prisoners or people in situation of jail were trying to communicate, it was the whole building.
hmm.
And I froze for a second and thought, what kind of abolitionist am I if I'm only fighting for immigrant and refugees in situations of jail, but not others? Why am I selective about my abolitionist practice? And that was, I came home and cried it all out and then sang and then, burned some sage. And I'm like, I'm going to be better now. um, and that opened up a Pandora's box of uh, Black mamas in jail, children in jail. They call them something else, but it's refugees and immigrant children in jails. But it's a whole other world that opened up that has to do even with the 13th Amendment of slave labor. But I think that was very moving. That was very, very moving, and it pivoted a change that I wasn't expecting.
Hmm.
At the community level, I knew somehow in the back of my mind, like I was hopeful and I knew that I was working to shut down the jail, but to the amount, to the extent that the movement ended up closing the three jails was amazing.
Wow.
It was a collective effort, and it was also a very introspective process. Yeah.
It's awesome. Wow.
I don't know if it's successful because it was successful for a lot of people, but it sounds like we're trying to frame it's the yes and then when the jail closed, we're asking, well, what's next now that this is done? And I'm like, it ain't done. There's children in the state of Illinois that are jailed right now by immigration. Um, we're only one state. There's so many other states, and because we closed down these things, these jails here, they started building it up in Indiana. Uh,
Hmm.
so it just they're transferring the problem, and so how do we empower other communities that also want to shut down jails in their communities? So it's a small battle, but it's a big accomplishment at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the challenges with this stuff too is you know, on some level we can only do what we can do, and even when we do a lot of work, we find out how much more work there is to do, or whatever else. That's on some levels it can be difficult to see some of that, but at the same time, you know, doing the good work to help others, I think, is always so valuable, so powerful. It's good stuff. So,
Yeah, I was just talking about how to help others to a collective in town here, and they had an idea, which was a really good idea, to give backpacks with stuff, items that unhoused folks might need. And I'm like, wow, that's a really good idea. But have you approached the unhoused community to ask them what they need? Like, oh,
mm,
I'm like, yeah. So it's really cool to help, and it's really important that we engage in efforts in our community. But how are you approaching it is also a delicate line that you have to walk and be careful to not cause further harm.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. That's I used to do a a church that I belong to does what they call room in the inn, and so they bring some I guess homeless people to spend the night and to get a warm meal and to like sit down and talk to um, some of the people that are there and whatnot, just to help out, because Texas can be pretty hot and different things. So we're trying to help people deal with inclement weather and different things like that. But of course, you have the other extreme in the Chicago area and things like that. But anyhow, one of the things that I found interesting was talking to some of the people, because it totally opens your eyes to what you think, and and asking is, what else would you like to see, or whatever. I found as a valuable question. But I think it also takes time to build those relationships and rapport and trust, and so like I'm not sure who you are or what you're trying to do, and really at the end of the day we're just trying to help. But I'm curious what you think you need as opposed to what we think you need. That could be completely different. And as you said, in some levels we could be trying to do really great things and actually causing harm. So it's important to be aware and
Yeah, there's
inclusive, I guess, maybe.
inclusive. Yeah, I think we tend to assume most of the time what we think children need. We just give it to them. Like, you need to drink water. Kids like, I'm not thirsty. Like, but you need to drink water. And sometimes it is they do need guidance. I'm not saying they should just do whatever they want, but they do we do need to ask. We do need to ask. And what you said about capacity and commitment is very true. There's a friend that reached out asking that her church is trying to engage with anti-racist work,
Mhm.
and like they wanted to bring in people of color to tell their story and pay them. And I'm like, that's a good. I'm very happy, very glad that your group of folks is trying to engage with anti-racist work. That's amazing. That's taking initiative. That's community connection. But now let's do it ethically. It's kind of difficult to share your story, very delicate story of traumatic events, racist events in your life to a group of people that you don't have a relationship with.
Right.
Do you feel, and not that everyone is going to feel uncomfortable doing it, because there might, but how do you approach people? How do you learn someone's story is the process of finding the best way that is not harming. How do you ask to approach someone, and if are they okay approaching with you approaching them, and it's okay, but it's also talks about the commitment. I asked them, how how much budget are you willing to spend on this? How much time are you willing to spend on this? How often does your group meet? Do you want it to be a permanent thing? Do you want it to be a program of 1 month, 6 months? How? What's your capacity so that you can determine your commitment and you don't feel guilty or you're tired? So that's also finding balance and connection. Oh. But hold on, I was thinking also, having a hella good life means having good, healthy, clean running water. It means having a hella good life means environmental justice. Having a hella good life is also healthcare. Healthcare, affordable, accessible healthcare, accessible and affordable mobility. Um, so health, I think hella good life is means having access to healthy food, healthy a healthy life, and access to opportunities. So I think that about covers it all.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I think, that's sort of an interesting thing that I'm trying to figure out on my own with as I'm creating this hella good life. What is this? On some level, it is a program for healing and mindfulness and wellness and all those kinds of things. Um, and on some level, it's again, the people that are going to connect or resonate or whatever, or my connections are probably going to be on a certain level. And that's great. And I want to help those people. But I also have these people that I'm not connected to that are outside of my space that I want to help. And so I'm trying to find that balance, as you say, to be able to either give back or provide ways to assist communities that I wouldn't typically be connected with, or whatever. And how can I do that without creating a class system and all that kind of stuff that we have to deal with within society? And I don't know. I just share that. That's kind of a little bit off topic, but it's one of the things that I'm working through myself. Is how can we do no harm? Is that's kind of one of my core values, is to do no or as little harm as possible. And that takes work. It takes understanding. You have to bring others in and ask those questions, and look for ways to support and commitment. How long do you want to do this, and all that stuff? That's really important questions to be asking.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, because that's your process. That's the path that you're walking right now. And it's beautiful. I find it beautiful. If you want more people to come share their story, I can probably connect you to some folks.
Awesome.
If you're looking for more connections. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for doing this. This is beautiful.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad that you're interested, and I'm always excited to bring some other people on and talk, and that sort of thing. And so I have two more questions here. So I guess here's the difficult one, I guess. So see what you think of this. What's one of the biggest hurdles or challenges that you've had to overcome in life? And if you feel comfortable, please come up with something. And if you don't, that's okay too.
I think the biggest challenge was recognize the colonization that I had been brought up with. So because I wasn't able to recognize it, or I didn't know what to name it, I would partake in it. And I
Right.
think once I was able to see it, it was it's a process, right? It was painful, but I'm glad that it happened. And then I was angry, like, why didn't they teach me this in school? Like,
Right.
why didn't they tell me? The first time that I heard that I was a person of color, I was in university, which was amazing that I made it there. But my a white friend told me, "Oh yeah, it's for people of color," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I'm not supposed to go. He's like, "No, you're a person of color," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not black." And he's like, "No, do you not know that you're colored?" I'm like, "No, I didn't know that I was colored. I thought I was, because I'm fair skinned." Like, so, or the fact that I grew up in all girls Catholic school, private school called Christopher Columbus, that was not accepting of any other type of spirituality. All of those things that, as I walk and recognize colonized spaces and colonization within me, I have to, it's in my healing process that I look back and start to pinpoint, like, oh, that's why that hurt. Oh, that I hurt someone by doing that. Oh, that's okay. So it's also a balance. Like, how much can I heal from what I'm going through right now, and how much can I address from and learn from what I have now, see with the different set of eyes. So I think, yeah, the biggest hurdle and challenge has been recognizing the colonization within me and that I grew up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's can be challenging work for sure. I mean, I know my own walk with some of this stuff, and racism, and contributing to the societal norms or the system that kind of keeps oppression in place. Exploring some of that stuff is not easy, and 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 it's amazing when you get blindsided and realize, holy crap, like I'm contributing, as much as I'm trying not to and doing all these different things. And you're like, wow, how did I miss this? Why didn't they teach this in school? Right. As you said, because they were teaching something else. And, wow, it just kind of pulls the rug out from under you sometimes. And you got to step back and readdress things and do that learning that you mentioned and then do better. So.
Yeah. Or sit down for a little bit, because we also need to rest.
Yes, I'm all about self-care. So yes,
I need to sit down.
yes, and that's one of the things that I think is really important. Taking care of yourself, making sure you're okay, getting your breath back and taking, you can take as much time as you need, I guess. That's one of the things I think sometimes we feel like we have to do something instantly, but if we're not fully there, we're not in a healthy space ourselves. That goes back to the intention thing for me. I'm all about, if you don't get that healthy space for yourself, you're not going to have the best intention. It's just going to be filled with anger or hate or whatever. And it's okay to be angry, but I think sometimes if we just lead with anger, we can destroy or do a lot of harm. If we can use it for energy to fuel the ideas, but come from a healthier space, I think it's a little bit better approach. That's where I'm trying to work anyhow. Well, I have one other question here. So what's one tip that you would give people, some of the viewers, for living their best life? So we talked about all kinds of things. Is there any tip that you would recommend or an idea to think about related to living your best life?
Wow, this is an action item. Go ride a bike. Go ride a bicycle. Get a group of friends to ride with you. Just as simple as that. I was in North Dakota when the access pipeline was, the big protest was happening. It's still happening, but I was there for a short period of time. I think it was 3 or 4 days, and I asked an elder, an abuelo, what can I do to help? What can I do? What is there for me to do? Is there anything? Can I engage in anything? And he said, stop buying paper plates. I'm like, hell yeah, I can do that. And I'm like, okay. But it took me a minute to, this really wise person that I wants some deep knowledge. Like, stop. I'm like, okay. So I think, go ride a bike, connect with others, being mindful of how they live their lives, like listen, respect, and learn, be open-minded. It's challenging and it's uncomfortable, but just listen to yourself, to your plants, to your bike. Listening also helps you diagnose, like, oh, so there's something off with my spokes in the bicycle, or
Right.
It's all, just listen, connect, ride a bike, drink water, drink water, drink water, drink water.
Very good. Very good. So, so if anyone wanted to follow you or get connected, is there some place they should go to find you?
Elgin, Illinois. No, I'm just kidding. I'm in Elgin. Here's your home whenever you want to visit. But So I'm on Facebook as Sandra Dávila. I work with I work and I help out with Elgin community bikes. You can find that on different platforms. I'm on Instagram as Sandia Roja, red watermelon. Um, where else am I? I'm on TikTok. I'm pretty easy to find if you type my name and say Sandra Davila Chicago or Sandra Davila Elgin. Things come up, LinkedIn and all
Okay.
sorts of things. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So it
Yeah.
looks like Brandon actually lived in Elgin. So, you know, I don't, where are you at now, Brandon? You're, let's see if he comes back here. But
I
yeah,
think
so
there's an
interesting.
Elgin, Texas, and there's an Elgin, Illinois. Ohio. I worked at Colonial Cafe. Yeah, Colonial Cafe is like a diner where you can get a huge ice cream in a sink.
Interesting.
That's
Okay, so
funny.
he's in Cincinnati now, I
Cincinnati.
guess.
That's
Very good.
awesome. Come back and visit Elgin. We have a bike community now.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
one of the things that I also say is, hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, like, share, subscribe. Hopefully we talked about some things that are interesting. If you, for whatever reason, would like to be on this show, I'm also open to have a conversation. Share in the comments if it's something you'd like to be on this show. We're looking for other good people. And Sandra, if you have some people that I should have a conversation with, I'd be excited to talk with some other people. Let's see. Brandon, small world, heading to Chicago in 2 weeks. So there you go. Pick up a bike.
If you wanna, you're welcome to come ride a bike.
And
There's a lot of rides in Chicago.
awesome.
Familia
Yeah.
Ruelas.
She says, yeah, we gotta. She says, thank you. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, here's the thing: life is messy, but living doesn't have to be. That's kind of my saying for this stuff. So let's get out there. Let's create those Hellagood lives. Let's have a great day. And any last thoughts, Sandra?
Yeah, let's make messes.
Will do. All right.
Mess,
Well,
mess and little fires. Yes.
there you go. We can do that.
Thank you so much, Teal.
All right. Peace, love, and respect to you, my friends. And thanks for watching this stuff. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Bye.